Joining us today for To My Way of Thinking is Mr. Terry Payne from Marble, North Carolina. He first came to my attention by his email blogs under the name of Mr. Snipe1945 on a variety of topics that are of interest to our country and to us as individuals. And I thought that his point of view, his way of thinking might be of interest to all of us. Thanks for joining us today, Terry.
Oh, thank you, Fred.
All right, let's get right to it. There are a number of things. Again, as I said, I noticed your the topics that you touched on, and that are national in scope and some local. And your most recent blog post had to do with, of course, the part of it had to do with mental health and the gun law that was recently passed by Congress to as their way of saying they did something for gun control. But what's the state of our country today, Terry? How do you see it? What's the state of our country?
I think in the big picture, what it is we've really transitioned into post-constitutional United States. And I have a list of some of the things that I'm not going to elaborate much on because otherwise we wouldn't have any time left. But basically, after 247 years, we really see some indicators that we're imploding internally. We have the open borders, which, is inviting fentanyl cartels, the human trafficking, just terrible. We have the Marxism in education, which we really have the, class warfare is ineffective in free classes societies, but it looks like the left is really pushing this class warfare using the Black Lives Matter group, which many of us consider to be really a Marxist extension of the Democratic Party. We have terrible censorship. Totalitarianism does very well with censorship. We even have medical health information citizenship now. The CDC, FDA, National Institute of Health, they censor anybody that disagrees with their views on medical matters such as COVIDs.
What is there? Let's put a pin in it, because you're right. You got a long list, and we'll come back to them. But what is there to disagree with what's happened from the National Institutes of Health and what they've said, what's happened, and the vaccines that are coming out, and what people need to do? You're still free to do or not do it, but what is there to disagree with what they've done especially concerning COVID-19 and the variants? What's there to disagree about?
Well, they censor doctors, particularly the doctors that are part of what they call the frontline doctors groups, Simone Gold in Pacific, from providing information to the public about vaccines and their effectiveness. It's after a long while, the CDC, FDA is finally admitting that the vaccines that they are calling vaccines, in fact, are not vaccines, but are more treatment modalities, and were never designed to you or I from spreading the virus or getting the virus. In fact, my late wife was boosted 4 times, had the original Moderna virus, and she contracted COVID. Joe Biden has been boosted 4 times, plus has had the original shots, and he has COVIDs today.
Well, I mean, all of those that's true, but they've always put it in the caveats that with the vaccines, especially with the vaccines or any vaccine, if you already have some pre-existing condition, they may not work that well. Nothing is rock solid.
Yeah, the bottom line is the CDC, the FDA, National Institute of Health, the National Institute, the Infectious Disease Division, which is Tony Fauci's area, has really hidden a lot of the adverse information through the VAERS report, which is basically how adverse reactions to anything are reported, in this case the vaccines. And those VAERS reports were terribly doctored. we're finding out now that Birx, Dr. Birx and Fauci hid a lot of the information from President Trump. And of course, now Trump is getting blasted for supporting the vaccine during his presidency, based on information he was getting, which was faulty. So the big picture is, like you say, if you want to get the vaccine, have at it. But you need to be aware that if you're a healthy person, the research is showing that you're a lot better shape not to take the vaccine than you are to take it. On the other hand, if you're 82, 83, 84 years old and you're a residential facility, it's probably a good idea to take it, because even though that won't prevent you 100% from getting the virus, the symptoms might be a lot less, and that's what you're concerned about with older individuals.
But that information has always been out there. No one that I understand, whether it's Dr. Fauci or Dr. Birx or any of those who have been there during the Trump administration, of course, Dr. Fauci was there long before the Trump administration, but none of them demanded that anybody had to get the vaccine. It's always been a choice to get it or not get it. And as with any of the vaccines we've had, going back to polio, going back to the beginning of influenza, we have vaccines for kids we've always had vaccines for the last 70 years. We've had vaccines for kids to go to school. They had to get vaccinated to go in. But it's been a choice. It's been a parental choice to do it, even more so now. So no one has demanded that you get the vaccine. You can still get it or not get it. Nothing's hidden that I can see, except that if you don't want to get it, you don't get it. And it's like anything else. I mean, but all of this blaming and back and forth and calling these people, I just don't see where that is. Even if the information is hidden, you got it. You got the information. So, and a lot of people, who would not have gotten vaccinated otherwise after seeing so many of their loved ones die of it, who with pre-existing conditions in particular, they decided to get it. And then again, other Americans decided not to get it. That's the beauty of living in America. We're not in China. Nobody came to anybody's house here and dragged you out as they did in China and forced you to get it. We don't do that here. So you still got the ability to do it, to get the shot or not get the shot. And that's really the bottom line. That's what makes living in America so great, don't you think?
Well, I have to disagree with you a lot on that, Fred.
Somebody dragged you out. Somebody dragged people out of their house and told them they had to get the shot in America.
Again, let me complete my sentence. The issue is, why do we have the federal government demanding and requiring all military members to be vaccinated or threatening them with discharge from the service?
Because they've always done that. If you're going in the military, you have to be vaccinated. That was long before COVID came by. You have to be vaccinated if you're in. If you're not going to get the vaccinations and you're not going to do what is a general order for you to do, then no, you can't stay in the military and receive the benefits. Everybody knows that. It's not an option for military people.
The second fact is, this is not a vaccination. The Salk vaccine is a vaccination, but the so-called COVID vaccinations are not vaccinations.
Well, what is influenza? Well, how about the influenza vaccine?
A vaccination, those are shots, treatment shots.
Who told you that? Where did you get that treatment shot?
The definition of a vaccination is not what the CDC is using these treatment modalities for.
But the CDC, they're the Center for Disease Control. They've been doing this forever. You're saying that the entire structure of the CDC is lying to people?
I'm saying that the CDC and the FDA, the National Institute of Health, Fauci's group, is corrupt in many levels. I'll just give you one example.
But it's not Fauci's group. He is a member of a arm of that. But he does not run the CDC. He doesn't run the national. I think he is in charge, CEO of the National Institute of Health. But it's not his group. There's a combination of scientists who are appointed by presidents of the United States and confirmed by the Senate in some cases. He's not running this. And even if he did, America still has the choice not to do it.
Okay, let me go back here just a second. First of all, Are you familiar with how the CDC and FDA approves drugs, including
Yes,
vaccines?
I
Okay.
am, but go ahead for the benefit of those who are watching.
Okay. The way it's approved is they have a committee that is supposed to look at the clinical trials and make a decision. Are you aware that those committees, the FDA, has members on the committee that own stock in Pfizer, Moderna, all the big guys? They also, many of them are consultants for Pfizer, Moderna, et cetera. They also have changed the law, the rules on how to get the clinical trials approved. It used to be you had to have several clinical trials to approve a drug, including these vaccines. Now there's only one trial required. The so do you know? Also, one of the things that has caused a lot of problem, and one of the reasons that many of us are very, very dubious about the CDC and FDA's recommendations is that the law has been changed so that government employees like Fauci can, in fact, patent drugs and receive the financial benefits of that.
Well, they can, but they can. Some can do that after they leave government office, but that is not happening currently. And so, what if members of the CDC and that have it? We have members of Congress who own stock in major corporations and who get a heads up on whether they're going to whether interest rates are going to be raised or lowered, or whether some stock is going to be sold. And they're in Congress and not supposed to be doing that, but they do it and they keep getting elected. But there's no,
I agree.
But there's no indication that that's the case in terms of getting this done. Again, the bottom line question here is, given all of that information, what do you think needs to be done? Do we not have a vaccine? Just say, let's say fair and do what you will. Those who are going to get sick, get sick. If you don't want to take the shot, what is it that you're saying should happen?
Because you answered my question.
Okay.
These are experimental vaccines.
Okay.
I have no idea, and they have no idea what the long-term effects are going to be. I have no idea whether the people that are dying shortly after they take vaccines has anything to do with the vaccines. I don't know.
All right.
What I am concerned about is the same issue that you just brought up about members of Congress who are really now the uniparty. We really don't have two parties in this country anymore. We have a uniparty. What I'm concerned about is that the very folks that are making recommendations on vaccines, such as Tony Fauci, in fact, hold patents for the very vaccines that they're approving.
Is there any evidence of that now? Do you have evidence that he holds a patent on anything on the current ones?
Yes, you could Google this. Tony Fauci owns 50% of the vaccine Moderna.
Okay.
The other 50% is owned by the National Institute of Health.
Okay. Well, given that that being the case, are you advocating that A, you don't have to get it, B, you shouldn't get it, C, don't? What are you advocating?
I'm advocating
you have to get it or don't get it.
I'm advocating that the members of the CDC, the FDA, et cetera, National Institute of Health, National Institute of Infectious Diseases, they should not be the ones that are approving vaccines or any other drugs, because they are receiving financial benefits from the drugs. In Fauci's case, he recommended Moderna, and he owns 50% of the patent. Right. That's clearly.
Well, I didn't take Fauci's recommendation on that. I took the Pfizer shot. I took the Pfizer anyway.
You're lucky.
So what? But again, so who would you accept the recommendation from? Who would you accept the recommendation from?
I would not accept a recommendation on these particular COVID vaccines from anybody. Now, I took the original Moderna 2 vaccines because at that time my wife had a life-threatening disease, and she did die, but it had nothing to do with COVID. So I was concerned about, and this is 2020, before we had any information on the shots at all. If I knew what I knew today, since both of us were healthy, I was healthy at that time, I would not have taken a shot. But I made a decision in order to protect my wife that I took the 2 Moderna shots. I think that again, we don't know what the long-term effects of these Moderna or Pfizer shots are. As you probably know, the scientist, I think he was a biochemist, I think, who actually designed the PCR test, which is supposed to be the gold standard for deciding whether you have COVID or not. He stated that he never designed that PCR test to test COVID. He designed it for industrial use. So, and the individuals that created the messenger RNA on, which is the main part of the COVID shot, they don't know what the long term. We know what some of the short term effects are because this VAERS report, the adverse reaction report, has a tremendous number of people who are having some pretty serious reactions. Are people dying from the COVID shot? I don't know. I think history will show when the data comes out that some very terrible decisions, have been made about this vaccine shot history.
Well, history is always 2020. That's like hindsight. And this is what we know. Scientists, doctors, and lawyers, particularly doctors and lawyers, have what we call they say, what do they have? They have a practice, which means exactly that. They practice it. Try this. Try this.
Well, that's the reason we say they're practicing medicine, right, Fred?
That's right.
You just hope they're not practicing on you.
Well, they are. They are. You go to a doctor and you say, "Doc, what's the old joke? My back hurts every time I lift the chair." He says, "Don't lift the chair." Right. When I used to drink 4 or 5 cups of coffee before 9 o'clock every morning, and then I started losing my breath before I could get to my next job site. And the doctor asked me, the first question he asked me was, "How many cups of coffee you drink?" I drink about between 5 and 9 o'clock. I drank about 5 or 6. He said, "Stop doing that." And so I came down to 1 and I could breathe again. Thanks again, Terry. We'll look to have you back.
Fred.
Take care. Next up.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. You too, sir.
Next up.
Bye-bye.
Next up, Fred Reviews. A look at what's streaming and what's 10,000 BC, released in 2008 in theaters. An overlooked gem of a film. "10,000, directed and co-written by Roland Emmerich, is one of those films classically overlooked by Hollywood and critics worldwide, as it does not have a well-known Anglo-Saxon stars at the helm. Cliff Curtis is the most recognizable face in one of the leading roles, and it isn't until the credits roll that one realizes that Omar Sharif narrates this tale of ancient times. Comparable to the 2006 Apocalypto, directed by Mel Gibson, 10,000 is a love story that is exciting, graphic with violence, historically significant, chock full of adventure, strong characters, great editing, scripting, and cinematography. It's not for everyone, but everyone should see it. Released in 2008, 10,000 BC, 9 of 10 stars.